The purpose of this video is to talk about the purchase orders with details for LINQ customers. We are looking at the Settings tab, and the department to select will be either your school number or your department number. The year is your fiscal year, so this begins July 1st of your year, in this case July 1st 2018 through June 30th 2019. The next option is for all POs for your selected department. Your PO status can be changed to just look at your open POs. And the next option is, instead of all of your POs, you can look at just a certain date range. Then you would click your Refresh Data button. It will go up to LINQ and bring your data back down, refreshing each one of your tabs down at the bottom. I'm going to click on Purchase Orders tab, and here is what is presented to you. So we have in column A, going across, reading from left to right, our purchase order number, our item number. For instance, if you would look at purchase order number 559, you can see that this particular purchase order had several line items on it. Then we have our department number, if any, the requisition number, the vendor name, the date of the PO, any description that was there for the purchase order. And if you're a LINQ customer, you don't use the e-procurement reference number or the commodity code. And then the next fields are the account code that was purchased out of. Your fund, purpose, program, object, location, and if used, user 1 and user 2. Then we see our line item total, paid to date, and any line item remaining balance. The last column that's visible right now is our purchase order status. And notice that we can see it's either closed, open, or void. So we can then filter and just look at our open purchase orders. So here's a list for this particular school, for this particular year, of all of our open purchase orders. So those can be tracked at any time, looking at our open purchase orders. So I can go back and I can look at all of my purchase orders by selecting all at any time. I can also click on my filters on and off button to look at all of my purchase orders. In our LINQ purchase orders, we're able to see our purchase orders two ways. First, again, back to purchase order number 559, we see that I have multiple line items for this one purchase order. So if I'd like to summarize that and just see one line item instead of 6, then I can click on this button at the top that's called PO Summary. When I click on this button, I will be presented with a little screen that says you are looking at the summary of one PO. So I'm going to click on this button, and what you'll see is that PO 559 now is, I only see one line item for that. I don't see 1 through 6. And you can see that in column B, I am filtered where the line item number equals 1. So you don't see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And with some of the other POs, there were 2 line items and perhaps 3 line items, and etc. And down at the very bottom in the left-hand corner, you can also see that it filtered out, and you can see, in my case, it says 266 of 536 records are found. If you'd like to see all of your POs again, then you just click on the PO line items, and then you can see that purchase order 559 now is showing all of those line items. So that's just a toggle switch between PO Summary and PO line items to switch back and forth between show one line of details or show all of the lines of details. Just all according of how you would like to see it. In all of our spreadsheets, they work the same. So I have in the blue box between column I and J, I have a show and hide box. So this is where I can see, for instance, the vendor information. So if I click this button beside vendor information, put a check mark there, then what I will see is a listing, or you can think of this as the Rolodex for all of my vendors. So now I have the information for my vendors. If I don't want to see that anymore, notice how it came up in blue, then I would just use my scroll bar down at the bottom, sliding it back, and then uncheck the vendor information. I can do the same thing with entered and approved by. That will come up in blue, and I can uncheck that. And the cost details as well, any of those options. So the vendor information, I'm just going to click on that again. Notice how that will push out your slider bar down in the lower right hand corner, and you will just need to slide that back and click on the vendor information to hide it again. Okay. So always with every one of our spreadsheets, you also have a helpful information tab. They are specific to each one of our spreadsheets. So we are again looking at the purchase orders. It's different if you're in the budget with details or in the absence history spreadsheet. So if I click on the helpful information tab, this will be specific to the purchase orders. So I can print all of this out if I want to, or I could just, if I wanted more information on the pivot table, I could click on the radio button for the pivot table, and then I would have more information on the pivot table, which is shown right down here. And I could print this section out only. So I'm going to click back on all topics. Notice how that now has, in the search topic, that has gone blank. And just to show you, I can click on File and then Print. And on my print preview down at the bottom, this actually would be a 19-page document on how to use the purchase orders with details. I'm not going to print, so I would just go back, and then I could click the return button, and it takes me right back to my purchase orders with details spreadsheet. I can also sort in any particular order. So notice the default is by purchase order number. So it's ascending from lowest number to highest number. I could sort by vendor name. So now it's alphabetical from A to Z, or by location, or by fund and PRC, and that would be over here by my account code. I'm just going to click back on my purchase order number. So you have multiple ways of looking at your information. I'm going to click now on my purchase order pivot table, and there are two ways to get to that. One is the tab down at the bottom to the right of the purchase orders tab. So I'm going to click back on purchase orders, and then to the right is purchase order pivot table. The other way is at the top in blue is the purchase order pivot table. Either one of those buttons takes you to the same place, the purchase order pivot table. I am in the habit of using the tabs at the bottom. So what you see is a default purchase order pivot table that comes in at the bottom. This is just one that we bring in and give you to work with. You can see that grid lines on and off are here, and you see how you have the lines going across. So the grid lines for this particular sheet are already turned on. So you could turn them off if you want to, but it's really nice to be able to see kind of the ruler going across. It makes it easy to read. If you like the report as it is, you can just click your full screen print view, and then you could do a print. I always suggest doing a print preview first and looking down in the lower left-hand corner and just making sure that that number doesn't say something like 1 of 300 pages. And that typically can happen if you have like a dangling column over here in Excel. So when you close the print preview, you can see your paper edge, and that is happening over between column H and I. So we have plenty of room to put other columns here on our report. So for instance, in this particular case, I would want to maybe include the status of my purchase order. So I'm going to drag down the status and I'm going to drop it here. So there's my status. And I may want the purchase order number. That's on line A15. I'm going to click with my left mouse button and drag that down, making sure that it looks like a T-bar, and drop. And then I can filter. So now I can also just look for my open POs. And now this may be a great report that I want to print now just with my open POs. You cannot hurt these spreadsheets. You can't mess them up. So I can then put this back up here, put this back up here. And my undo button is also available up here anytime. Maybe I try to drag down, I'm going to drag down, in this case, the fund number. And I'm going to make a mistake. Notice how in this case, it does not look like a T-bar. Here, it's a T-bar. Here, it is not a T-bar. I'm going to drop it the wrong way. And oh my gosh, I have made a huge mistake. And so I will just hit the undo button and say, whew. And then I'm going to go up here and grab fund, because maybe I do want to see what fund this is paid out of. And notice how I've got the left mouse dragged, and now it looks like a T-bar and not like a vertical or a horizontal line. See, this is horizontal and this is vertical, and I'm going to drop. And now I have my fund, and I can undo if I don't want the fund, or I can just drag it back up there to anywhere in column A. So the purchase order pivot table is very easy to use. Notice how we have a red button right here that says Pivot Table Helpful Information, and that will take you to the Helpful Information tab, specifically on how to use your pivot table. So this is a great tool to be able to get information out of your pivot table. Clicking back on the Purchase Order tab, we also have a tab for requisitions. So you as a LINQ customer use requisitions, and then eventually these requisitions get turned into purchase orders. So you can filter and you can look for a certain requisition, which then get turned into purchase orders. Okay, so that's kind of what happens first. Your requisitions get turned into purchase orders. You can also do this. I'm going to click on the Settings tab, and right from your desk, you can look up things from previous years, refresh your data, and then go back in here and look for something that you may have ordered. So let's say you were looking for pencils. So I just typed PEN, and it found pens, and it found pencils, and it found opener. So then I can just unclick off of this, and it found pencils and pens. And then this is what I ordered. So no longer going to a file cabinet and looking through manila folders, I can just use my spreadsheet to look up things from previous years by refreshing the year that I want to look things up. It is fantastic. Now, I didn't actually refresh that year, so you can see that this is this current year, but you get the idea. I can just refresh. I can search for what I want to search for here if I have a really nice description. So I'm going to put the select all back on, and that's why it's really nice when you order something. In this case, notice it's forms and supply, and we have 6 line items on that PO number 559. It's very helpful to know what were those 6 line items that we ordered. So it's very helpful when you're searching for things to have a nice description here. Back on the pivot table, you can run any of these pre-formatted reports. So I used down here the one that came in automatically. But notice we do have a report called Open POs by Location. So what you saw me do a minute ago is I dragged down the status like this, and I filtered on Open. Okay, so here's my Open POs. Okay, I'm going to unfilter, and I'm going to move that up. I'm going to run this report now. All of these reports we give you to run, and you can try all of these and any of these and see which one works for you, and then you can build off of that. So I'm going to run this one. Open POs by Location. So if you remember on the Settings tab, I'm at a school. I'm 322. So when I look at my pivot table, that's the location, right? I'm only at school 322. So I don't really need to see this location, so I can just move that up. And it's showing me program code 014. And it's going to show it to me by the program code. So over here, when I'm looking at my purchase orders, here are the program codes listed for each one of my POs. So I have my program code listed here. Again, if I don't need it, I can take it up here, but if I do want it, I can keep it here, and then I can drag down my fund and my purpose. I might want my object code, etc. So that will build out my account code if I want it listed here in my report. Notice in this particular report, I have the vendor and I have a nice description for what this PO is about. So I have a vendor and I have what that was about. So that is a very nice thing. And then of course I could do a full screen print view. There's the edge of my paper. So I know I could bring in other fields up to a little bit more information here and still have room to print it all on one piece of paper. There's multiple things that you can do with your purchase orders with details spreadsheet. Thank you for watching.